Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Buffalo Sports Talk of Western New York. My name's Tom Hastings, my partner Tom Joyce. Today on Let's Talk, we have a show Tommy, I could hardly sleep last night because I was so excited about doing this show. How excited are we? Tommy went out and bought us T-shirts so we could talk about a personal hero of both of ours in the 1970s, a man known as Evel Knievel. Tommy, was there anybody cooler than Evel Knievel?
He was the coolest thing walking. He had the motorcycle, he had the jumpsuit, he had the cape, the cane, the swagger stick, and he just exuded sideburns. He just exuded everything cool about being an adult man in our view.
Don't forget the action figure. It wasn't a doll, damn it. It was an action figure.
That's right.
We're going to talk about all that. Before we get into the show, though, if you could do me a favor and hit the like button and hit that subscribe button along with the bell icon so you can be notified every time we upload a video here on our channel. And leave a comment down below. Let us know your memories of Evel Knievel. Give us some ideas of some shows you'd like us to do on Let's Talk here. Because what we'd like to do on Let's Talk now, ever since you did the show on the Buffalo Norsemen, is we'd like to find some subjects for some old times sports and talk about our memories. For instance, last week we did the Super Bowl years with the Buffalo Bills. We did a show on the National Wrestling Federation, which was a pro wrestling organization based out of Buffalo in the 1970s. And as I mentioned, the Buffalo Norsemen, a pro hockey team that had one season in the mid-1970s. And that team, their one season helped, what do you want to say, influence or inspire the movie Slapshot. So if you guys have any ideas of some shows you'd like us to do, let us know. We'll be glad to think about it and maybe put that show together for you. But today, never mind all that. It's Evel Knievel time, Tommy. Yeah. Oh my God! Go ahead.
Evel was born in Butte, Montana, tough mining town. Born in '38. It was a rough childhood for Evel. His father was a miner. He dropped out of high school. Got in some trouble with the law when he was younger, racing around, as you can imagine, on first a bicycle, then a motorcycle, stealing hubcaps. It was in jail where he got his name. He was picked up for stealing hubcaps. He was spending the night in the local clink, as they call it. And the cell next to him was a local rowdy called Awful Knievel. His last name was Knievel. Everyone in the town called him Awful. And the jailer walked in one morning and says, "Wow, I've got Awful Knievel and Evel Knievel." At that point, Evel Knievel's real name was Robert Craig Knievel. He liked the sound of Evel Knievel, so he went with
it's probably the coolest name ever.
It is. But he was sure to change the spelling because he didn't want people to think he was actually evil.
Right.
So he said, "I'll go with Evel Knievel, but I'm going to go with EVEL."
E-L. Yes. Oh, dude. When you think about Evel Knievel, you think about all those famous jumps. I think of Wide World of Sports and Frank Gifford and Howard Cosell covering his events. They were always spectacles.
Yep.
I think about some of his real famous jumps, successful ones, the Houston Astrodome, LA Coliseum, at Kings Island where he jumped 133 feet. Just awesome events and awesome spectacles, as I said. But then I think the most famous thing is the slow motion crashes.
Yeah.
And he was like a rag doll. And probably the most famous crash was Caesar's Palace.
Yeah, Caesar's Palace, jumping the fountain up front. And he going over the top of his Harley Davidson is forever burned in the mind of anyone old enough to remember that. And it was amazing to look at that and think that he survived that.
Yeah.
He was in a coma for 29 days after that. And he came out of his coma and immediately began to plan his next jump. And that's the thing about Evel. And you would hear Howard Cosell and Frank Gifford, watching this and commenting. There was always that era that they had of, this he's crazy,
Right.
And the idea of someone that would just consistently risk his life over and over just seemed, something that was almost impossible to understand at the time.
Well, I just remember what it meant to me as a kid. And I don't think that there was a kid in the neighborhood, especially the boys when I was growing up, that didn't want to be Evel Knievel. And I think back now at all the baseball cards that I ruined in the 1970s because I wanted to put them in between my spokes of my bicycle so it make it sound like a motorcycle. And we built our own ramps, made out of wood, and we would jump them all day long in the summertime. And I'm just thinking some of the Hall of Famers that I had on baseball cards that when I'm a little kid, I'm not thinking that this is going to be worth anything, and they're all gone now because I had to sound and act like Evel Knievel, and I don't regret it for 1 minute.
And you wonder how many broken arms that Evel was responsible for in the early 70s. But he was a larger than life figure. He presented himself as just this fearless warrior. And again, in 1975, that jump at Wembley Stadium, another horrific crash, jumped over 13 buses and suffered terrible injuries. And 4 months later, he went to Kings Island, Ohio, and jumped 14 buses. He just did not allow failure, injury, even
nothing was going to get in
to
his
stop
way.
him. You know?
I remember an episode of The Simpsons called Bart the Daredevil. It's a great episode where there's a character based on Evel Knievel, and he says to Bart in the thing, he's in the hospital laid up, and they I think Homer brought him into the hospital to maybe try to talk him out of being a daredevil, and he goes, "Can I have a moment alone with the boy?" And he goes along with him. He goes, "Son, 2 things you got to know: bones heal, and women love bruises and cuts."
I think you live by that motto. 35 broken bones.
Oh man.
13 major surgeries involving plates and screws. I mean, there was a guy who just, he didn't just walk the walk, he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk.
He really did. There was another famous crash he had in Wembley, too, another one where the bike kind of ran him over afterwards.
Right, yeah.
And that was just, the thing is, this stuff happened a lot of times on live TV, watching it.
Exactly.
And it was a magical time in the 70s because there wasn't this... 24 hours of sports that we have nowadays. Kids today, I don't know if they would even know what to do with themselves in the 70s.
Programming. Yeah.
And it just made these events so must watch. You talk about Evel, you talk about the great Muhammad Ali fights back in those days too. And not only the fights, but the interviews leading up to with Howard Cosell and Muhammad. And I remember when he got into the fight with Joe Frazier and stuff. And God, we even watched bowling. I knew pro bowlers' names, Tom. Earl Anthony.
I remember
Mark Roth.
We had TV Guide, and they would have the advertisement in there. Saturday, ABC's Wide World of Sports, Evel Knievel. And you would focus on that, and you couldn't wait for Saturday to sit down and watch your hero attempt to do something that no one else in the world was doing.
Well, we can say I'm 61 years old. I'll be 62. You just turned 62, right?
Yeah.
What kid our age did not have the Evel Knievel action figure?
In stunt cycle. Generally regarded by men our age as the greatest toy in the history of little boy toys.
When I opened up my present on Christmas Day and it was Evel Knievel, it was maybe the greatest present I ever had in my life.
Absolutely.
That alongside it, I also had a Joe Namath action figure, and I used to make them fight each other. And Evel would always win because Joe had bad knees. And so did Evel.
Exactly. But, my kids over the years have asked me many times, what was the best Christmas present you ever got? Now, I'd have to say it's my daughter Kelly, who was born on Christmas.
Well,
but
aside
Aside from that, I think, without hesitation, I have always said and will always say my Evel Knievel stunt cycle. The joy of opening, ripping off that paper that Christmas morning will never be forgotten or surpassed. And I talk to so many guys our age who say the same thing.
Well, I remember at our kitchen, my bedroom had a real deep, thick carpeting, and you'd wind that toy up, and then it wouldn't go very far or very fast because of the carpeting. But our kitchen was just a straight off floor, and I could get some great speed and wheelies. And I would spend hours a day.
Yep.
Especially on the weekend, just revving that thing up, and I can still hear my dad yelling, "Stop doing that! You're making too much noise!" And I didn't care.
Take them outside, jumping potholes, and
oh my God,
setting up. You mentioned before Matchbox cars for them to jump over. It was a great toy, and I think that it was for a lot of people, for little boys, it was like the ultimate toy of our era.
Well, much like the wrestlers that we talked about in our show with the NWF, this was a superhero come to life, a true superhero come to life. That you saw him die on camera, but yet he was back. Yeah. And doing it again, nobody should have lived through some of the things, the crashes that he had.
Yeah.
But yet there it is. He made it, and he was just a sight to behold.
And
it was amazing.
You do something that I don't think as kids we were aware of this, but he was one of the first people to use a celebrity to deliver anti-drug messages.
Yeah.
At a time when people really weren't doing that. He was traveling around the country speaking to crowds, schools, delivering a message to kids to stay away from drugs. And again, that was really revolutionary ahead of his time.
Well, there was a period in the mid-'70s where I want to think that he was probably, if not the most famous, one of the top 5 most famous people in the world.
Absolutely.
During that time, you think of like Elvis, maybe. That might have been more popular. Maybe the Beatles, members of the Beatles, but he was right up there as far as pop culture goes. And you would see him be a regular on the Johnny Carson show, or I remember Dean Martin did a roast to Evel Knievel one year, and he was just a pop culture icon.
Yeah, and his message, it was a positive message. It was, don't quit.
Other than the, breaking your bones.
Don't quit. Follow your dreams. Don't give up. I never quit. Be like me.
I don't know if my mom really appreciated him being a role model. But they made a movie about him with George Hamilton.
Right.
His son Robbie went on to be a stuntman or a daredevil.
Yep.
And he had some amazing jumps himself.
Yeah.
I think the most famous event with Evel Knievel, though, would have to be the Snake River Canyon rocket jump, which was also probably his biggest failure. They even had a song.
Yeah.
Remember, he's going to have to face that canyon.
Yeah.
And it was one of the events of the 1970s. When I think of all-time sporting events, I think of some of the Super Bowls. I think of a few World Series games, especially Boston World Series against Cincinnati. And I think of Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King, a spectacle. But then I think of that Snake River Canyon rocket jump that who wasn't excited to see that?
Closed circuit television. That was really one of the pay-per-view, one of the pioneers of that whole thing. I couldn't go to see it, but I remember sitting outside and just waiting for the results, waiting to see what had happened.
Right.
And then the chute deployed on the rocket car.
I believe they showed it a week later on Wide World of Sports.
Yeah,
where we could see it
in the rocket sled, as it was called, kind of just drifted down and landed in the bottom of the canyon. What happened there? It's always open to conjecture.
Yeah.
Evel claimed that it was a mechanical failure.
There's a great debate about that. The guy that made the rocket that constructed it, he swears that Evel panicked and deployed too soon, and Evel said no, it went off. He had nothing to do with it. It's probably a mystery. We'll never know what actually happened. But man, it was a grave disappointment. Trivia: who promoted that? Now I don't know if a lot of people know this, but a young Vince McMahon Jr. was the promoter of the Snake River Canyon jump. And he lost $250,000 and went bankrupt promoting that event. But as you said, it was the short circuit television. It was shown in theaters. And Vince would lick his wounds and learn from that failure. And about a decade later, he did the exact same thing when he created the very first WrestleMania, which became a phenomenon and ended up helping him build the WWF and now WWE into a multi-billion-dollar company. And the roots of all that started with Evel Knievel and the Snake River Canyon jump.
Yeah, and Evel lived to be, surprisingly, he didn't die on his motorcycle, which I think most people would expect would be the end of that story. But he lived to 2007. He died when he was 69. Multiple issues he had. I'm sure a lot of them related to the beating his body took.
I'm sure.
But he did give an interview for a magazine several years before he died, and the interviewer said, weren't you scared at any point?
I know what you're going to say.
And he said, of course I was scared.
Oh.
He said, you'd have to be an idiot not to be scared. But he said, I decided I was going to kick Death's ass.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I thought you were going to go with the Jim Rome interview that was real famous one where Jim Rome asked him, if he was nervous or whatever. And he just looked at Jim Rome and goes, do you know who the hell I am?
That's fantastic.
And Jim Rome would play that clip over and over again when people talked about toughness.
Yeah.
Just Evel Knievel saying, do you know who the hell I am?
Yeah.
It was just an amazing experience to be able to see him perform, to play. And I had that rocket ship too.
Yeah.
When you talk about his action figure, I had the motorcycle, I had the rocket ship. I just lived to watch those events.
And I think that there's a lot of tough guys in sports. Josh Allen is a tough guy, right? And there's been a lot of really tough guys come down the pike in professional sports. I don't know if anybody has ever been as legitimately tough as Evel Knievel.
Well, here's the thing, Tom. You look at the athletes today. They're genetic freaks. You look at like pro wrestlers, and they're just like bodybuilders, and they look like Superman. You look at heroes like Superman, Batman, and with their muscles. Evel Knievel looked like your uncle.
Yeah.
He wasn't like muscle bound. He, like you said, he walked with a cane. He just looked like a guy that you would see in the local Rite Aid, right, getting his prescriptions or something. He just looked like a regular guy, but he was doing these superhuman things, and it gave you a feeling that you could accomplish anything. If he could make this jump, if this guy could do what he's doing, then there was nothing impossible in the world. Right. And I think that's what I took from it.
That's a great way to put it. And he his motorcycle, he's a part of American lore. His motorcycle, his Harley Davidson, is on display in the Smithsonian. And for anyone I think older than 60 or late 50s, he's an indelible part of our childhood and a symbol of, I think, what people see in America. He was red, white, and blue. He was, his costume, his motorcycle were iconic American flag, and he represented the American ideal of, I'm just going to go out and go for it. And this country, since day one, has been built on that. Men who are willing to risk everything to succeed, whether it's in business or building or whatever it was, and that's what he represented. He's like the ultimate American symbol to a lot of people.
Yeah, you're right, and I hope that a lot of the younger people won't remember him. Even his son. It's been a long time since Robbie's been retired, so. Yeah. Names start to fade, and that's one of the reasons we do shows like this is, maybe if there's a chance that some young kid goes on YouTube and says, what's Evel Knievel? What's that all about? And turns on the show, and we just give them a little bit of a history lesson, and it's so much fun remembering it. But hopefully that memory doesn't fade, into the history books, because, and if it does end up being that we're the folks that remember it, then what great memories we have, and how lucky were we that we were able to experience that as kids. I wouldn't give up my childhood for anything, the time that we grew up, and I wouldn't give up those memories of Wide World of Sports and Evel Knievel for anything. It was just a great time to be a kid. And what a great hero to have, huh?
Absolutely.
So that's going to do it for the show today, guys. Hope you enjoyed Let's Talk. Give us a like and a subscribe. Comment down below. Let us know your memories of Evel Knievel. It would really help us out a lot. help the channel. Thanks for the folks. We had a few new subscribers this past week. Thank you to those guys for subscribing. Hope you're enjoying the show. We're going to continue to do this. We will be back next Monday for another episode of Table Talk, and we're kind of putting together what our Let's Talk episode will be for next week. We're not sure yet, but it's going to be something fun, I'm sure. But until then, until next week, guys, that's going to do it for us. Tommy, any last words?
As they used to say in the 70s, Viva Knievel.
Viva Knievel, baby. We'll see you next week.
It was awesome.
Yeah.